Hello there, Shortcuts. This is Steven here. This is the first of two videos for this week's Shortcuts list. Price list will go out at 9 p.m. sharp Sydney time on Wednesday, October 2nd. If you would like to be on the list, drop me an email at shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. This first list is a genre list. So we have some blues rock, some metal, some soul and jazz, and some shock rock as well. All right, let's have at it. As always, it was tricky to decide what record should be the lead-off record. I always have a bit of fun figuring out what it should be. Now, this week's quiz question is a little bit different to previous in that this is the kickoff record for this particular list. Now, The Who's Quadrophenia will be the kickoff for the next list. And the quiz question is, what is the link between Are You Experienced by the Jimi Hendrix Experience, and Quadrophenia, the rock opera by The Who? You're going to have to watch the start of the second video to find out. All right, so Jimi Hendrix, Are You Experienced? Universally lauded as one of the great kind of psychedelic rock debuts of all time. And there's a couple of interesting things about this copy that I've got for sale this week. It is on the black international label that indicates it's a first press. But what's interesting is it is an Australian first press, and furthermore, it is an Australian mono first press. So that gives us a couple of things to have a chat about. All right. So why is this record so lauded? Well, I think the story of Hendrix going to London and falling in with the swinging 60s scene and becoming a megastar virtually overnight, terrorizing Eric Clapton's dreams for the rest of his life, is kind of a bit moot at this point. Everyone's aware of it. For those of you who aren't aware, probably one of my prized possessions is I have a copy of Jimi Hendrix's Are You Experienced, signed by Noel Redding, the member, the Irish, kind of Irish member of the Experience. So I'm a fan. So where does Are You Experienced rank in the kind of Hendrix lexicon? You've got obviously Electric Ladyland, Axis Bold as Love are probably the keys. And, God knows how many albums have been released by Hendrix posthumously. It's kind of crazy at this point. So the mono mix of Are You Experienced is probably the only mono mix of Hendrix's music that I think is worth your time. By the time he got to Electric Ladyland, the swirling, swathing guitar, the fading in and out of right and left channel, the deliberate placement of drums in the left channel and guitar in the right, etc., became part of his studio trickery. And to my mind, really, that stereo is the way to listen to the second two Hendrix studio albums. But Are You Experienced is a little bit unusual in that there are different mixes, clearly different mixes for several tracks on the record for mono versus studio. And I think the key track where you hear that most is Red House, which is on side one of Are You Experienced, which is my second segue, because, infamously, and I think infamously is the right word, these 60s bands had different track lists on UK versus US releases. And Hendrix, the Beatles suffered from this. Hendrix is no different. Now, the Australian Are You Experience follows the track list of the original UK release, which means that it starts off with Foxy Lady, goes into Manic Depression, into Red House, and I think, I think that's why I've kind of kept this list separate from the classic rock, because unlike the US release, Are You Experienced is quite bluesy because of Red House and I Don't Live Today and several other songs that they had on their live set list that didn't make it to the US. So the US has side one, Purple Haze, Manic Depression, Hey Joe, Lover Confusion, May This Be Love. Then side two, The Wind Cries Mary, Fire, Foxy Lady, a different US version ending in Are You Experienced. Side two of the original UK has May This Be Love, Fire, Third Stone from the Sun, Remember, and Are You Experienced? And so there's some things that are missing. So notably, The Wind Cries Mary, the first demo or first ballad that Jimi Hendrix ever wrote, is not on this version. So there's some real, really significant differences. And so this is one of those weird albums where it's really worth owning both. But the UK original has a purity, has a blues heart that the kind of single-laden US release doesn't quite embrace. The mono mixes are different to the stereo mixes, so you don't miss the swathe sound, the kind of the context switching that you get, and so it's really interesting. And the Ozzy one, surprisingly for the time, is actually really well made. It sounds pretty good. It's not amazing, but it's pretty good, and it's a really unusual artifact. It's the Australian mono first press of Hendrix's Are You Experienced? Now, Hendrix himself inspired many, but he had a couple of guitarists that he cited as an influence himself, and this is one of them. Now, this is a contemporary record. This was released a year or two after the Jimi Hendrix Experience debut. But if you go online and look up Jimi Hendrix, B.B. King, you will find these two legends of the guitar jamming on a cover version of Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone, which is pretty magnificent. Highly, highly recommend that you give that a listen. This, alongside Indianola, Mississippi Seeds, are the two B.B. King studio masterpieces. He did some live records, which are pretty extraordinary. Over the years, you'll have seen Live at Cook Jail and Live at the Regal many times on my list, and that's because they're awesome. This one's a little bit harder to find. This is 1969. This is also the year that B.B. King won the Grammy, and the Grammy for, I think it's Best Contemporary Guitarist or Best Contemporary Song, for the final track on Completely Well, which is called The Thrill Is Gone. That song is one of the great blues songs. It is perfect. It cannot be beaten. It's an amazing track. And the great thing about Completely Well is that there are several other tracks on here that kind of aspire to that standard, and that's saying something. Confessing the Blues, the closing track on side one, is just beautiful, but the opening track, So Excited, 5.5 minutes, written by B.B. King, is pretty special as well. This is I think this is the Japanese first press. I have to check, but I can see there it's got 2,000 yen written on the bottom left, printed on the sleeve, which would suggest that that's what it is. But Completely Well is just wonderful, wonderful record. Now the Japanese were pretty great at releasing really high quality material, but from all sorts of blues guitars. It was a genre that was deeply embraced by the Japanese. When I was over there in April, you would find sections of the record stores. Now, bear in mind, these are six-story megalopses, but don't think of them as Tower Records, where it's all super arranged and kind of whatever. If you have that in your mind, spacious, it's not like that. These are cramped rooms with stacks of records everywhere you can see. But when you would go to the blues sections, you would always find records by Rory Gallagher, the seminal Irish blues guitarist. In the live setting, really is where it's at with him. A few of you have bought his Live 74 tour, one of not just the greatest Irish blues album of all time, but one of the great live blues albums, I think, without any question. But what I really like about this compilation is that it brings together the 9 tracks, I think it is, from Rory Gallagher's first 4 studio albums. So you get Tattooed Lady, which I think is, in terms of his studio recordings, by far his best track, his best song. But you've got Banner's Blues, Going to My Hometown, Race the Breeze, Crest of a Wave, and then ending on my favorite track of his, which is Admitted. Really beautiful. It's an absolutely beautiful sleeve. It's in fantastic condition. I have a copy of this already. I was playing this one earlier today. I'm home alone at the minute. My wife is in Europe. I've been playing so much music that I can't normally play, and I was enjoying that very, very much. It's really, really good. And I think that those first 4 Rory records are a bit patchy. So having the best of them pulled into one record it really works. And stylistically, you don't get plangs. You don't go, oh, how does that sound? They're of a piece. It works. If someone had said to me it was an album of his, I would have said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, so we had some blues rock, psychedelic rock from Hendrix, leading into some great blues guitarists. I'm going to swap for a couple of soul classics. We have this concept on Shortcuts, for those of you who are not aware, called Shortcuts Royalty. These are records that 20 or 30 of us have bought over the years that mean that it's kind of like the equivalent of the Ebert and Roper 2 thumbs up, or whatever it might be, the 10 out of 10 on Pitchfork. These are records that we can vouch for. They're great records. They might not necessarily be as famous as many other records, and on top of that, the Japanese pressing is awesome. And this I'm going to put up there as one of my all-time favorites. This is Caught Up by Millie Jackson. This is an amazing soul album. It is wonderful from start to finish. It tells a story of a love triangle between the man and his wife and the man and his mistress. The opening side is the story from the perspective of the mistress, and side 2 is the same story from the perspective of the wife. And she plays characters. Her voice is earthy and raw and awesome. There are many highlights, but there is something I need to call out. After the really kind of soulful and fantastic opening track. If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. It leads into the highlight of the album, which is 8 minutes of the rap. Now, it is what it says on the tin. It is a rap song by a blues female singer from 1970, whatever this is, 73, I think. Hard biting, powerful, funny. It is laugh out loud at times. The good, the bad, and the truth. I would call that's what's so good about soul music. Caught Up Millie Jackson is a master of the genre, and yeah, deserves to be in every collection. As does Al Green. Now, Al Green, his run of 6 records, working with Willie Mitchell of High Records in the kind of early to mid 70s, is as good as any run of records there has ever been, ever, period. This is the final record in that run. This is a beautiful UK press, is in fantastic condition, on the original red High Records label. Comes complete with the UK inner, which is a whole series of really amazing records. Man, if you have the records that are listed on that inner, you have one of the greatest record collections you will ever see. Use it as like a Bible for what you should collect. But have a good time. The final record in the masterful series between Al Green and Willie Mitchell. Al Green, after this record, went full gospel. At this point, he'd bought his church. He was on his way to being the Reverend. You can kind of hear the gospel influence creeping in on some of the other tracks, like The Truth Marches On and Hold On Forever. But it's amazing. You still have that incredible High Records horn section. But what gets me in High Records is how tight the drum and bass is. Oh my gosh, it's just amazing. Okay, as usual, I'm running way out of time. I'm going to talk reasonably quickly about these next couple of records. This is the Japanese first press of Blizzard of Oz, Ozzy Osbourne's debut solo album. His kind of FU to Black Sabbath plus Dio became his biggest selling album of all time. Sold more copies than any record Sabbath ever made. Featured the incredible and tragic Randy Rhoads, the guitarist, who was discovered, launched by Ozzy on that record, and who unfortunately passed away less than 2 years later. It's brilliant from start to finish. It's and that Japanese first press of this really does it justice. There are presses of this that sound way too thin, and when you've got Gravy Train and particularly Mr. Crowley, you need that bite and that heft, and yeah, it works great. Talk about another record that sounds awesome. This is Wasp's debut album that really embraced that period of time when glam rock met hard rock met shock rock, and that record really kind of caught the wind, as they say, and became something pretty phenomenal. I'm going to talk about one more metal record from this era, and then I've got a rarity that I want to show you very quickly. This is Sin After Sin, 1977, Judas Priest. Probably on the cusp of when they went full heavy metal. You can hear the dryness of the guitar kind of predicting that heavy metal sound, but it's quirky and great. This is the album that has the amazing cover version of Joan Baez's Diamonds and Rust. It is super good. I can't tell you how good it is. The guitar playing is awesome. It's brilliant. I think that it's definitely upper echelon Judas, and that's the Japanese first press. All right, I mentioned a rarity. This is a Metallica rarity. This was available only through their fan club. This is number 4,675 of 5,000. This is Blackened 2020. It's interesting. So this was two cover versions of tracks from Justice for All. Blackened. One cover version of. There's two cover versions of Blackened. One is live, which is actually a pretty good live cover. But the one that's most interesting is the Zoom cover version that the band did during COVID lockdown, which is the opening track. It is really good, really good. And if you think that you buy into Where's the Bass on Justice for All tracks, listen to that. Listen to Blackened on this. You won't be missing the bass. I put it like that. The other track on here that I wanted to call out is Metallica's cover version of Wood by Alice in Chains. Yeah, super hard to find. Still sealed. That's Blackened 2020. Fan club only release from Metallica. All right, I've got, is it three jazz records I'm going to talk about quite quickly. These are examples of jazz that I think is a little bit more accessible and perfect for a Sunday afternoon beverage or a bit of a chill out. This is Stretching Out by the Jazz Crusaders. There's Birth of the Cool, Miles Davis. Now this is interesting. This was a series of singles that Miles Davis put out in the late 40s into the early 50s that a record executive quite cleverly put together into an album called The Birth of the Cool. Now, I think this might be a mono. It is. This is a mono Japanese pressing. It's in fantastic condition. So you got Jerry Mulligan and Gil Evans. You've got, I think, one of my favorite. Yeah, it's right up there. Moon Dreams on this record by Miles is awesome. Considering Miles was born 1926, so when he first started recording this album, he was 21 years of age, and he held the band to these recording sessions, legendarily 8, 9, 10-hour recording sessions in his pursuit of the sound that was in his head. And it worked. The Birth of the Cool. Wonderful record. Now, this is Bill Evans and Jim Hall's Undercurrent. But that's the backside. This is what people would see on the shelves. I think that is one of the most beautiful album sleeves ever made. And it absolutely reflects the most mellow, lush, gorgeous jazz album that you will ever hear. Bill Evans on piano, Jim Hall on guitar. The listening notes, this is perfect, but I think this I would vouch that this record has never been listened to. It is in perfect condition, even to the extent the inner is just immaculate. You can see that diatribe. I'm calling it a diatribe. There's the two of them. It is Wait Quickly by Barry J. Titus after Jim Hall and Bill Evans. And it is just it is a stream of consciousness. Lie, quicksilver, idealization, limb delusion, chrome, rationalization, dance, drag, curtain, bog, cracked ice, Amazon, burning nerves. That's just one quote. If anyone has any clue what the hell they're going on about, please let me know. Either way, this record is a delight. And I've got two compilations. Returning back to the soul genre very quickly. One of my favorites, The Best of Sam Cooke. I love this sleeve. He just looks so handsome and beautiful. Look at that. It's spectacular. Shake, Wonderful World, Bring It Home to Me, another Saturday night. Basically, every Sam Cooke track that you would ever need. And then finally, something that's a little bit rarer. The Attention series that was released in Japan in the mid-70s has some real rarities. The Attention Black Sabbath is, a real in-demand record because of how good the sound quality is. And this one is the equivalent for Dusty Springfield. There's the Japanese on the back. La Bamba, Son of a Preacher Man, Windmills of Your Mind, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me, Yesterday When I Was Young, Look of Love, I Just Don't Know What to Do with Myself, famously covered by the White Stripes. That's the Fontana label, Tension, Dusty Springfield. And there we have the soul, blues, genre, metal, kind of shock rock list for this week. So I will crack on to list 2 and answer the quiz question, which was, what's the link between Are You Experienced by the Jimi Hendrix Experience and Quadrophenia by The Who? Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen this far, please leave a comment. All that stuff's really important. And if you would like to receive the price list, drop me an email, shortcutsrecordsaus@gmail.com. Bye.